Now back to Inside West Virginia Politics with Mark Curtis.
And welcome back to this weekend's edition of Inside West Virginia Politics. We're going to talk about Campaign 2020. Senator Shelley Moore Capito, Republican of West Virginia, will have a primary challenger. Let me introduce him right now. He is Republican Alan Whitt. Alan, great to have you on the program.
Glad to be here, Mark.
Why are you taking on Shelley Moore Capito?
Well, we need a true conservative as an option for our principled voters in 2020 on May 12th. And Senator Capito's record would be surprising to many of those principled voters.
How so?
Well, most people think that she's an avid pro-life supporter, but her record shows that she's actually quite squishy on that. And my lifetime has been spent working on issues to defend the unborn, as well as various other topics.
Tell me about the organization you're president of here in Charleston.
I'm the president of the Family Policy Council of West Virginia. So we defend faith, family, and individual freedom at the Capitol and all over the state. So I'm really a citizen of the interstate of West Virginia. I travel almost all the time, city council meetings, organizing volunteers. I recruit candidates for down ballot races, and our goal is to make sure that people can not only have their beliefs, but they can live according to those beliefs, not just in church, not just at home, but also in their places of business. I
got ahead of myself a little bit. I'm a political guy. I started asking the political questions. Tell us something about your background. Give us a little 30-second biography of Alan Whitt and who you are, where you're from, and all that.
I was born southwest of Mingo County, about a morning's drive. If you leave at breakfast, you could be at my parents' dairy farm, my grandparents' dairy farm, by lunchtime at the tail end of the Smoky Mountains. And so I'm a country boy at heart. I was fast as a high school kid, so I won a state championship in the hurdles. It allowed me to go to college, and while I was there, got involved in my first political activities, and it has brought me to West Virginia, back to Appalachia. And so for the last 6 years, I've been the president of the Family Policy Council.
Okay, we should mention we have a little rivalry going on here. You're an Auburn University graduate. I'm a University of Florida graduate. We didn't know that until like 30 seconds before this interview. So.
Just as long as you don't chomp at me.
No, I'm not going to do that. Maybe with a couple of the questions. What are some of the issues? I mean, I think you're right. Senator Capito is one of those on the Republican side that's willing to reach across the aisle oftentimes and try to work together with the other side if need be, as Senator Manchin does as well. How would you be different? And pinpoint a couple of issues where you would really do different things than she has done.
Well, when Senator Capito was first elected 18 years ago, she was probably the very best representation that West Virginia could elect. On the Republican side. But West Virginia has grown far more conservative than Senator Capito's voting record. And I am the kind of individual that I'm not interested in accumulating wealth. I work for a nonprofit charity. My goal is to be able to serve the people of West Virginia, to make sure that the things that drive the economy are the small business owners. Yes, we have to protect our petroleum assets, and we need to get every bit of that coal out of the ground, which powers our cell phones and these lights in the studio. We absolutely need to do that, and we need to protect that. We need to protect our miners. We need to protect the pensions of those who have gone underground for years. But the primary economic driver are the thousands upon thousands of small business owners. And they have to know that they can go to work every day and live according to their beliefs, whatever those are, without fear of unjust government persecution because of those beliefs.
By the way, we should mention to our viewers, we have an invitation out to Senator Capito. She's a frequent visitor to this program, and we certainly want her to come on. She's often here talking about the issues of the day, but we'd like her to come on and talk about the campaign at some point in time, and we'll make that happen in terms of trying to get equal time. What else out there? As you look across West Virginia, what do we need to be doing that we're not doing?
Well, the Constitution guides us, and we must protect that at all cost. And though I am a proponent of the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, which allows us to bear arms, must also be protected because the Second Amendment protects all of the other amendments. And just recently, within the last couple of months, when asked whether or not she would be in favor of the new red flag laws being the concept that anyone could just raise a red flag if they thought someone had a gun and might be of a concern, that individual could have those weapons removed, perhaps even incarcerated without due process. That is not the perspective of a conservative. It's not the perspective of the overwhelming majority of West Virginians, and I will absolutely never vote for one of those red flag laws. I'm a strong proponent of the Second Amendment.
All right, we're getting into some issues here. We've got to run. We have 5 minutes for a candidate. We'll have you back as we get closer to the primary. Quickly give your website so viewers out there can check you out and find out more about you.
Whitt for WV, www.whitt, W-H-I-T-T, for WV, and that gets you right there.
All right, Republican Alan Whitt challenging Senator Shelley Moore Capito in the primary. Again, we'll have you back in the spring, and good to meet you, Alan.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. We'll have more of Inside West Virginia Politics after this break.